Thank you guys. I've got some surround sound going here. So look, I'm looking forward to getting into a conversation, but the very first thing I want to do is just say hello and tell you why I'm running for president. I'm really running for president because I believe in us. I believe in who we are. Policy issues and the kind of ideas that each candidate is bringing to the campaign is so important, and I hope we talk about some of those really critical policy issues. But we are a nation that underlying every great advance we've had, workers' rights, civil rights, expanding Social Security and Medicare, all of these things have always been underlined by a spirit in this country, a defining character in this country. And the defining spirit and defining character of this country, I think that this is where we are. This is a moral moment. This is a crossroads in our country. This election is not a referendum on one guy in one office. It's a referendum on who we are and who we're going to be to each other. This is a moral moment, and this is what is driving me to run for president of the United States, is because as a guy that's been involved in making big change before, I was a chief executive of a city that had a national reputation for crime and corruption, but we, the people of that city, because of the spirit of who we are, we pulled the city together and we manifested the best of our ideals that helped us to make big change. And so I worry today that we're falling into a deeper tribalism in this country, where we hate each other just because we vote different, where the lines that divide us, people are beginning to think that they're stronger than the ties that bind us, and I don't believe that. I believe that this is a moral moment in this country where we have to affirm a common cause and a common purpose, where the challenge of this day and age, quite frankly, I hear this and I warn our party, the challenge to this day and age is not one guy in one office. Let me tell you, I hear from pundits all the time, the most important thing that Democrats want from a candidate is someone who can beat Donald Trump. And my response to them always is, can't we have bigger aspirations than that? Beating Donald Trump is the floor. It is not the ceiling. Beating Donald Trump gets us out of the valley. It does not get us to the mountaintop. I'm running for president because I want us to get to the mountaintop. And I worry, we cannot let this moment and the moral vandalism that we're seeing going on in the White House change us. This is not a time to abandon our virtues and our principles. It's a time to double down on them. In a time when we hear a lot more open hatred and bigotry, someone who's using the highest office in the land to demean, degrade, and divide, this is the time that we have to remember what the ideals of patriotism are. Patriotism is love of country. And you cannot love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. And let me tell you, love is not sentimentality. It's not weak. It's not anemic. Love is sacrifice. Love is service. Love says if your family doesn't have great public schools for your kids, my kids are less off. If your children don't have health care or prenatal care, my family could be bereft of their genius. Love is understanding that we're all in this together. We're not called as a nation. I hear this all the time as if people are bragging about it. We're a nation of tolerance. God bless America. I was tolerating the cold I had last week. But the aspiration is not tolerance. Tolerance crosses streets. Love confronts and embraces. Tolerance builds walls. Love tears them down to build bridges. Tolerance couldn't care less. Love couldn't care more. Because we're in a moment where we got here to where we are because of the power of that type of patriotism. Look, I'm here because of that. 50 years ago, this year, to the exact, it was 1969 that my parents were trying to move from the South to this great Mecca. I don't know if you've all ever heard of this place. It's called New Jersey. and my parents were trying to move there. I got some wild gesticulations from the Jersey on the side over here. It's a Bruce fan. My parents were trying to move up to New Jersey, and here's this black family. Every time they would go to the areas in the northeastern part of the state with the best public schools, they would be met by a real estate agent who would see it's a black family, and they would lie to them and say, oh, this house is sold. This house is taken off the market. And my parents were really worried. They were frustrated. They were distressed. And what they found was a group of Americans, patriots, who met in a living room, mostly white folks, who said to my parents, we got you. This nation was not founded because we all look alike, pray alike, or come from the same ethnicity. We're founded on virtues of equality and justice. And so what they did is they got up and they created this sting operation. I call it a conspiracy of love, where they actually sent out, when my parents went to go look at a home, if they were told it was sold, they would leave, and a white couple would come right behind them and to see if the house was really still for sale. And they would find out the house was for sale. And on the house that I grew up in New Jersey, my parents were told it was sold. The white couple came and found out it was still for sale. And the white couple put a bid on the house for my parents. The bid was accepted. Papers were drawn up. And on the day of the closing in the real estate agent's office, amazingly, the white couple didn't show up. My father did, and a volunteer lawyer. And they walk into the real estate agent's office and confront the real estate agent. This should have been the end of the story, but it's not. The real estate agent gets up so angrily that he's been exposed and caught that he punches my dad's lawyer in the face. He sigs a dog on my dad. And let me tell you, as I was growing up in this beautiful town in New Jersey, in this wonderful home, every time my parents would tell this story, the dog would get bigger. My dad would be like, boy, I had to fight a pack of wolves to get you in this house. This is the truth of who we are. We are here as a nation because in the roughest times, we have faced bigotry and hatred and demagoguery before, people that sought to divide our country along class or race or religion. The gardens of our democracy have never been free of those weeds. What's defined this nation is our ability to address those problems by bringing people together in larger coalitions. And we can't allow the darkness of those who preach and benefit and opportunists off of that kind of sentiment. We can't allow that to change our hearts and souls. This election, I'm telling you, we as Democrats can't define ourselves by what we're against. We need to define ourselves by what we're for. We can't be in this moral moment, we can't define our highest aspiration as a party as we're here to beat Republicans. No, this moral moment calls us to be the party that says we're going to unite Americans around our common values. And I worry, there was this big town hall, and I was running up to the stage that time. There was no rope lines. I don't know where we've gotten here, guys. Come on. I'm running up to the stage, and I'm about to leap up on the stage, and a big guy sees me. I'm a big guy. I don't know if you noticed that. I'm a former tight end for Stanford, a former All-American football player. The older I get, the better I was. And I'm about to leap up on the stage, and big guy puts his arm around me and goes, dude, I want you to punch Donald Trump in the face. And I don't miss a beat. I go, dude, that's a felony. We are not going to beat Donald Trump fighting him on his turf, on his terms, using his tactics. That's not what this moral moment calls us for. This is one of those moments that we need to remember. How did we overcome in the past? The know-nothing party that was anti-immigration, except for back then it was Irish and Italian immigrants. We saw fear-based politics in the time of McCarthyism. We saw Bull Connor, who brought big dogs and fire hoses. Did we beat him by bringing bigger dogs and bigger fire hoses? No. We beat him because of artists of activism that showed the best of who we are. They called to the moral imagination of our country. They called to the consciousness of this nation. You know, we have a lot of work to do. The crisis of climate change, challenges of expanding healthcare to every American, because healthcare should be a right in this nation. But how do we get these big things done? There's an old African saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. When they put Sputnik up, our adversaries, did we challenge them by attacking each other? No, we created new coalitions, took hidden figures, African American women, partnering with white male astronauts, and we defied gravity, went further and farther, and landed on the moon. When people stormed beaches in Normandy, did they stop and ask, what political party are you in, or were they patriots? I believe the next president of the United States must be someone who can energize this country. Not along partisan lines, but call us to understand that however you identify, we all have urgency. Because my generation, I'm worried about what our epitaph could be. Life expectancy going down. Baby boomers, 90% of them did better than their parents economically. For millennials, it's down to 50-50. The nation that used to lead the planet in education doesn't even rank in the top 10, and other countries believe in this radical concept called science. And they know. They know that 80% of brain development happens from the womb until the third or fourth year. Other countries now are universal prenatal care, universal preschool, paid family leave. We are the industrial nation that leads all other industrial nations in infant mortality, maternal mortality, low birth weight babies. And you know what? Let me tell you this, the morally right thing to do is also the economically right thing to do. You know, it's actually cheaper to provide at-risk women doula care than it is to pay the medical costs for at-risk babies. You know, it's cheaper to provide mental health care to Americans than to deal with it like we deal with it now by incarcerating the mentally ill in our jails and prisons. We're the first campaign to put out this week a plan just for child poverty. You know, our inaction on child poverty costs our economy $1 trillion a year? Not to mention the lost genius and productivity from children when they can go to school nutritionally fit to learn, materially fit to learn, and to schools that are well funded. These issues reflect more of an impotency of empathy than what I believe this country needs right now, which is a more courageous empathy, a revival of civic grace, a more radical love. And why do I ache? Why am I so motivated? I'm the only United States senator that I live in a neighborhood below the poverty line. I made a decision 20 plus years ago that I want to stand on the front lines of the fight for the American dream and join with people where we don't mistake wealth with worth. I see the beauty of my community. But in my community, these issues are raw and plain. I don't want to just beat Donald Trump. You know why I want to go to the mountaintop? It's because there are people in, thank you for asking, there are people. He does have a deep baritone voice, doesn't he? And he's a handsome, bald black man. Something about him. There's something about him. I want to be president of the United States and your stunt double. On my block, we're going to have fun tonight. On my block, my glorious block, my incredible neighbors in my community, they don't want to just beat Donald Trump. Because across the street from me is this incredible drug treatment center called Integrity House. I go over there every once in a while, hang out with the fellas, I bring food, they get mad at me, it's vegan. Yeah, thank you, some vegans in the house, high five. How do you know somebody's a vegan? Don't worry, we'll tell you. And when I sit with the guys, I see the absurdity of having their addictions treated with jail and prison and not treatment. On my block, I see people working full-time jobs, but they still have the dignity-stripping endeavor of still needing food stamps to feed their family at my local bodega. On my block, parents turn on their faucet and don't know if the water's poisoning them. And let me tell you, there are 3,000 jurisdictions in America where children have more than twice the blood lead levels of Flint, Michigan. And in my block, people are shot. Shahad Smith got killed with an assault rifle on my block last year. These aren't partisan issues, but they define our country by what we do. And we were this nation that when people died, we acted. When 4 girls were killed in a bombing in Birmingham, God, this nation, black and white, Christian, Jewish, we responded and changed laws. When women in my grandparents' era were caught in a fire at the shirtwaist factory and threw themselves out windows to die on the pavement below, God, the consciousness of this country was outraged and we changed laws. And now, in our houses of worship, from a synagogue in Pittsburgh to a church in Charleston, South Carolina, they're shooting and killing us, and we do nothing. At a nightclub in Orlando, at a concert in Las Vegas, people are getting shot, and we do nothing. Our children in schools from Parkland to Newtown killed under their desks. And 90% of us agree that the laws should change, but nothing is changing. And now we're at this shameful, ignominious moment in American history where we're sending our children to school this fall, the strongest nation on the planet Earth, and we tell them, we can't protect you, so we're going to teach you how to hide in school. There are more shelter-in-place drills in America right now than there are fire drills for the first time in our history. What is this election about? Is it about who has a better 15-point policy plan on guns? Well, yeah, I believe I do, but that's not going to make the change that we need. We are going to make that change by demanding it, because Frederick Douglass told us, without struggle, there is no progress. If I'm your president, if you put me in that office, I warn you right now, I am going to ask more from you than any president has ever asked from you in your lifetime. Because if you think we can deal with a global crisis like climate change by making no sacrifice, go back to my grandparents' generation when they beat the Nazis. And even if you weren't in Europe, you were doing victory gardens. You were rationing in war bonds. We mobilized this whole country to meet that challenge. The next leader is going to have to remind everybody that we all must lead. I'm running for president because I know if we do that, if we awaken that spirit, that conviction, that common cause, that's when America leaps forward. And let me end then with this story. Because I know who we are. I have faith in us. I decided when I got to be a United States Senator to do what a lot of senators do that have a high sense of self-regard. I decided to write a book. And if your name is Booker, it's a lot more pressure. You have to understand that. It's like there's expectations, for crying out loud. And so I go back to find the people that organized that sting operation, that conspiracy of love from 50 years ago that helped my family move in, and they were easy to find. Because the head of that organization at 92 years old is still head of the organization today. She doesn't represent black families, lots of black folks. She represents same-sex couples. She represents Americans with disabilities. She represents Muslim families, because justice has no color, no race, no orientation. It is one justice, one nation, one love. And so here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. She sends me to the lawyer to get the final details, the guy that organized everything. I talked to this guy, amazing man. He confirms to me that it wasn't a pack of wolves, it was just a dog. And then I ask him why. Why would this guy, in the 1960s, when he was barely providing for his family. He just started a business. He was busy, struggling. Why would he take so much time to help black families move into his neighborhood at a time of fears of white flight and real estate prices going down? Why? I just had that question. Why, sir? And he goes, well, I remember the day I made the decision. And I go, really? The day, the moment you remember it? He goes, yeah, it was March 7th, 1965. And I'm like, that's very specific. And I go, what was going on? Well, he was at home that night watching. We had 3 channels back then. I know some of you are horrified. What did you do? At 11 o'clock, it'd be all over. It'd be like the national anthem and done, for crying out loud. Some people are like, yay, wish for those days. We had to spend time with our families, for crying out loud. And most of America was watching this TV movie. Some of you will know this. It was Judgment at Nuremberg. And on this historic day in America, something happened. They pulled away from the movie to show breaking news, to show a bridge in Alabama called the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And so here is this guy on a couch in New Jersey watching his TV as these marchers started in Selma trying to march to Montgomery. They get stopped on the Edmund Pettus Bridge by Alabama state troopers that would not let them pass. And then he watches in horror as these marchers get gassed. And then the state troopers storm into them and just start viciously beating the marchers. We know this day now as Bloody Sunday, but on this day, what does a white guy on a couch 1,000 miles away do when he sees this? Does he fall into the trap that I've fallen into before? Watching something really horrible on late at night on TV, Rachel getting me all upset. And I allow my inability to do everything to undermine my determination to do something? Or the mistake that Americans sometimes make is we realize that the most common way we give up our power is not realizing we have it in the first place. No, this guy stands up in the name of patriotism, in the name of love, and says, I'm going to do something about this. And he thinks to himself he wants to go to Alabama. Then he chuckles because he knows he can't close his business for a day. He can't even afford a plane ticket down to Alabama. And so now he stresses, but he decides to do what is a great American tradition. He decides, you know what? I'm just going to do the best I can with what I have, where I am. And he calls around to see who needs some help. Maybe 1 hour of pro bono work he can spare. And he finds this woman, now 92 years old, back then a young woman who's like, hallelujah, thank you. The two of them start working together, and they form this sting operation, this conspiracy of love. And they start organizing. They get other people from the neighborhood who are standing up, patriots, to join them. 65 turns to 66, turns to 67. They get other lawyers involved, turns to 68. He says by 1969, he remembers the moment he gets this case file of this family struggling to make it, distressed because they can't find a house in their neighborhood. And he says, Corey, the names on that case file were Carrie and Carolyn Booker, my parents. I'm literally standing before you right now, a United States senator, the fourth black person ever elected to that office. I'm standing here right now, a candidate for the highest office in the land, because one man on a couch in a moral moment didn't just sit there, he stood up for America. And now, you want to know how change is going to be made? It's not electing one person to one office. We are the change. We are the leaders. And if I'm your president, we are going to get to the mountaintop. And there's only one way to get there, and that's together. Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. All right. Thank you. So, sit down. I'm excited. I'm so excited. I had 3 Diet Mountain Dews before I came in here. But after this crowd, I don't need that. All right. So I would love to answer any questions. You guys have to tell me if there are people raising their hands behind me. All right. All right, no takers. Right here in the front row. Then we're going to go with the Cubs hat on. Bears hat, I'm sorry. Oh my God. Oh my God. The Bears. All right, here we go. I'm sorry. I'm a Giants fan, for crying out loud.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. I have bipolar, and I was in the hospital.
What's your name, first?
My name is Jennifer Patel.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Jennifer, nice to see you tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, it's great to see you. And actually, I have two things. And I was at the Crisis Stabilization Unit, which is basically a big, a nice waiting room with really nice recliners for 2 days. And there were people there that were waiting for a bed for 3 weeks. And the other thing that has affected me is the privatization of Medicaid. The house, I had the provider almost sold it to pay the bills, and just lately when they were getting the new Medicaid providers, they had to bring down the people serving, gave them half time, so I went from 3 days to 1 day service.
So this is something that is so frustrating to me. It is a particularly big problem here in Iowa, where you all are about 49th when it comes to services for people with mental illness. And what really charges me up even more so is that we are a nation that has rendered a healthcare issue to become a stigma, and we have decided as a nation that we are not going to provide healthcare, and instead, because of the fractured systems that we have, people are falling through the cracks. And we're seeing the worst of who we are manifested in the lack of care and conscious care to people who are struggling with mental illness. And this state right now, and again, I know I'm not an Iowa resident. I am a grandson of an Iowan, though, so I feel a little more entitled to just be this critical. But with that Medicaid scheme, privatization scheme, has been a disaster in this state. And so I want you to know, as a United States Senator, I'm not waiting. There's an incredible couple in this audience named the Carpenters who have been inspiring me and challenging me, and I just joined with them. I think my office connected with them earlier today, in fact, to begin work on actual legislation, national legislation, because I'm still a senator. No matter, before I get to be president, I got a job to do right now. And I want you to know that we're going to work together on a comprehensive mental health care bill. And if I'm your president, I am taking this issue out of the shadows, out of the stigma, and I'm going to make it a national urgency that we step up, not only in getting to health care for everyone, but to make sure that includes taking mental health care out of stigmas, out of our jails, out of the homeless population, and make us be a nation of morals and values that treats every American like they're our own members of our family. We can have a health care system like that, and I'll make it happen as your president, okay? All right, I have insulted this man and his football team. So, sir, you can have at me.
Thank you, Senator.
And what's your name?
George Sauerberg. I'm a retiree in Iowa City. And regarding immigration, I'm wondering, would you reverse the matter of AB, which is Jeff Sessions' ruling that domestic abuse and gang violence are not criteria for asylum? And also, what would you do about quotas? Thank you.
Sir, don't sit down yet. That is such an amazing question, and I'm grateful that you would ask it. It shows that you are a person who lives your values, and you have a chance like this to stand before everybody and say that this is your priority, what's happening to people at our border, which is absolutely outrageous. And when you're a man standing up and I just came from the border about a couple months ago to escort women who were denied entrance to our country, who were already, some of them were survivors of sexual trauma, but now stuck in Juarez, Mexico. They are being targeted by people who were going after the weak and the vulnerable. And I went there to escort them into our country for asylum because I was invited by a group, but it was so offensive to me that this country that has always stood for justice, that has learned from our dark past when we turned around the St. Louis, a ship that came here from the Holocaust, and we turned them around and sent them back to Europe where most of them died in the Holocaust. That we should be a nation that says we have a system for asylum. And so you're standing up and asking me that question right now. It encourages me more than you know. And I want you to know that if I'm your president, I've already shown who I am by going to the border repeatedly, everywhere from going to visit private prisons that I will end in the United States of America if I'm president, all the way. So I will end the quotas. I will reopen an asylum system that works, that doesn't put nursing moms on concrete floors. I will show this country that the way we remain safe and strong is not that abandoning of our values, but doubling down on them. And that this president here, who wants to be a fearmonger on immigration, is actually making this nation less safe, weaker, less economically strong, because he doesn't know us. He doesn't know who we are. It's enough is enough. We are a nation of immigrants. It is what has made our nation strong. And we didn't say to poor Irish or Italians who came to this country that you're not worthy. We saw within them future entrepreneurs, future teachers, future presidents. And every immigration source to this country has shown. In fact, Fortune 500 companies, just about half of them are founded by immigrants or children of immigrants. If I am president of the United States, I will return us to moral strength and economic strength and security at our borders by upholding our values and our virtues, not torturing them with moral vandalism. So thank you, sir, for your light. All right. Behind me. All right. This guy, you like enlisted the help of your friends. They're like all pointing at you, but you're gonna have to wait to be next because this guy has less hair than you, sir. And for the balding men in America, I want to stand up yet again. Sir, stand up and show the people your sexy head.
I like to think of myself, I was joining the League of Men with Receding Hairlines.
Yes.
So soon I'll be part of the Bald Man Club.
What do you call 100 rabbits in a row going backwards? A receding hairline, folks. Here we go. All right.
All right, Senator, thank you very much for coming today.
Yes.
So what we've seen in the last couple weeks is we've had a president of the United States threaten to withhold money, foreign aid, to another country, then make a phone call to a leader of a foreign country to have them investigate a political rival. So I'm concerned with someone who's a sitting president and is committing that atrocious act. I'm concerned about other senators, about members of the House, about other government officials, lawyers who would be otherwise meddling in other countries to do favors for them or do dirty work for political opponents. And so as president, what laws would you support? What would you propose to kind of end this corruption and put us back into this democracy that we all love and cherish so much?
I didn't get your name. Adam. Okay. So, look, this is not a partisan issue. Our founding fathers warned us about foreign intervention in our elections. This is something that they were prescient about at the very founding of our nation, that they worried about foreign governments undermining our election. And this is a president that has taken so many of the fundamental design elements of our nation, that we should be a nation of checks and balances, where nobody is above the law, especially not the President of the United States. Where we are a nation, the strongest nation on the planet Earth, has its strength multiplied and magnified when we stand with our allies, especially when they're in need. like the Ukrainians under attack by the Russians, who are also attacking us through cyber attacks. And so the question is not, are you Republican or Democrat? The question is this is a moment in America where patriotism has to come before partisanship. And where's the line? Where's the line for you as an American? What line does a president have to cross that goes too far? So here is, I feel like I'm Johnny Carson and you're his like, this is, who was that? Was that Ed? Who was that, Johnny? Ed McMahon, that's it, Ed McMahon. These young people are like, who's Johnny Carson? So I just want to tell you right now, the line's been crossed for me. The line, the investigation is going to continue as it should. We've got more whistleblowers coming from. The Secretary of State has been implicated. The Attorney General has been implicated. There's a lot more to be uncovered. But when a president stands up and invites China to interfere in our election, China, that's a line for me. And again, I have a lot of new ethics laws I'm going to bring to the presidency because there are things in Washington I think are absurd. It's the reasons why, look, I'm trying to show it in my campaign by not taking corporate PAC money or, pharmaceutical executive C-suite dollars or corporate PAC money or lobbyist money. We have a lot of changes on ethics, but I just want to tell you, we don't need any new laws. This president has crossed the line. What we need is to hold them accountable. And so this is the test. There's a reason why the Profiles in Courage is a very thin volume. But this is a moment where we're going to see what the kind of courage that a lot of the Republicans are elected to do. And I'm not going to say that it's easy. Because a lot of them, by taking that step, they may pay political consequences for it. But this is one of those moments that history will look back and say, what did you do when a president was trashing the Constitution, inviting foreign powers to interfere with our elections, and siding more with an enemy who is trying to destroy our democracy like Russia is, than with a country that's an ally that's under attack? Thank you. All right, sir. What's your name? John, with your curly locks, for crying out loud. I just want you to know you're a college student, man. I save so much money every year on product. This is a better way to go.
So it's great to be here. I am a student here at University.
John, are you an undergraduate?
Yes, I am. I'm a freshman.
You're a freshman?
Yes.
And where did you grow up, sir?
Michigan.
Michigan?
Yeah.
All right. And what's your football team, sir?
Lions.
What's that? The Lions?
Lions professionally. This week was hard for me to root for Michigan or Iowa.
Okay.
Hard to tell.
Okay. Wow. You're a brave man. Just insult Iowa right now. Wow. Let me tell you something about being a politician. You got to pander a little bit to the hometown crowd. All right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Good to know. So you've had a great career in politics. Everything you've done on criminal justice, education, gun reform is incredible. But
stay with that for a little while.
It's been said that people learn the most from their greatest mistakes, and I was wondering if anything that you regret the most from your career, and if there's anything that you feel you would have changed if you could, and how you've learned from that.
All right, John, we're going to talk later. So look, I didn't take a normal road in politics. I grew up in, as you heard the story, in some really nice suburbs, and I went off to Stanford University, and I confess to you, I got in because of a 4.0, 1,600, 4.0 yards per carry, 1,600 receiving yards. Got a football scholarship. Stayed and got my master's, went overseas on a Rhodes Scholarship, studied Oxford, got back to Yale. And my dad, you would think, would be proud about this, but he's not. He's like, boy, you got more degrees in the month of July, but you ain't hot. Life is not about the degrees you get, it's about the service you give. And he goes, and my mom told me this. There's a great Bible story about the Jesus' parable about the talents. And in my book, I write about this this moment in my life where I made a decision to move to Newark, New Jersey, because my mom told me, God has given you these talents. Don't make decisions out of fear. Make them out of what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? That was a question my mom asked me. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Take that risk. And so I said, you know what, if I couldn't fail, I want to go to the front lines of the fight for America, where the dream is being denied. And so I moved into a really tough neighborhood in Newark. And I'll never forget that God has this, I just have this wonderful view of faith. That faith is this idea that when you come to the end of all the light you know, when you're about to step into the darkness, that faith is knowing one of two things will happen. Either you'll find solid ground underneath you, or the universe will send you people to teach you how to fly. And so I jump into Newark, and I always say I got my BA from Stanford, but I got my PhD on the streets of Newark, from people who were the best professors of my life and never had college degrees, many of them. These were wise, strong, inspiring people. And one of them, Miss Virginia Jones, the tenant president of my projects, I actually moved into the projects. She too, like my mother, pushed me to take on challenges that were bigger than I am. And so one of them was just to be a good neighbor. This may sound strange. You asked me about my political life. The times I've made mistakes is when I put politics before people. And one of the hardest stories to share with you is I'm living in these high-rise projects. Median income in my neighborhood is about $14,000 per household. And these beautiful kids, I watch them grow up over those 8 years. And there was a crew of young boys that hung out in my lobby, and they were great. One of them, Hassan Washington, was literally reminded me of my dad, because just like my dad, he was being raised by his grandma. 4 floors below me he lived. He had the same kind of wit and sharp sense of humor. He was a natural leader. Hassan and his crew hung out there, and as they got older, they got into high school, and I remember one night I come home and I smelled something that I hadn't smelled that pungently since I was at Stanford. It was pot. And let me tell you, the rules of marijuana in this country are very different for college students than they are for inner city African American and Latino kids. There is no difference in America at all for dealing drugs or using drugs. Drug use is equal amongst all the ethnicities, but if you happen to be black, you're 4 times more likely to be arrested for it than somebody who's white. And if you're black and poor, dramatically more. And so this is one of the reasons why I got to the Senate and immediately put a massive bill on marijuana legalization. But you should never talk about legalization in my presence, please don't, unless in the same breath you're talking about expunging the records of people who've been incarcerated. And so alarm bells go off, because these kids do not have the margin for experimentation as kids in my suburban town did. And I immediately get worried, so I tell the kids, instead of just talking to them when I come home, I say, fellas, let's do something, let's go out. I'll take you to a movie and dinner. And they're like, okay. And I made the mistake of letting them choose the movie, because the movie they chose was Saw 2. I mean, it was just awful. And when I sat them down at dinner, I just started asking some of my favorite questions, like, what's your dream? And what I saw with the young people, they had dreams. One of my guys, he wanted to own his own automotive repair shop. He just loved cars. And I started realizing I could connect these guys with mentors, and I made all these plans and made promises that I would follow through. And I did a little bit of it, but then I got really busy. You know what I got busy doing? Running for mayor of the city of Newark. And I'll tell you, the campaign got so busy. When you're campaigning for an office, I don't care if it's president or mayor, you're going around the clock. You're pushing your endurance. And these kids in the lobby, when I would come home late at night, they would be hanging out, and they would give me energy. They would tell me, Corey, we got you. We're going to vote for you. And they weren't 18, but okay. And, one night I come home and they have all my lawn signs. They make a little parade line and to the elevator, and I'm waving to them, and they're chanting my name with the title I dreamed of, Mayor Booker, Mayor Booker. I get in the elevator, the door closes, and then I wonder, where did they get those lawn signs from, for crying out loud? They were the greatest kids. I get elected to be mayor of the city. I win my dream job. I am now the leader of the state's largest city in a crisis too. Violence was spiking. We were about to tumble into a global recession. And I was so busy, but there were also death threats on my life. So they stationed police officers all around me in the lobby of the project, safest it had ever been. But high school kids do not want to hang out where police officers are stationed. So I lost track of the guys. But I'm now going the big job. I'm going to save every child, right? Well, in the first weeks that I'm mayor, there were lots of shootings. And I get called about a shooting down the street from where I live. And I go down there's a body covered up, another one being loaded in an ambulance. I barely affirm the dignity of the life on the pavement. I go and minister to the living and stand there on the street corner. People crowded around to see the blood on the sidewalk. And I gave this great speech like I did early in my days. This is not who we are. We're going to overcome this. And I went home that night to steal a couple hours of sleep. And back then I had a BlackBerry, and I'm just going through reading the reports as a brand new mayor, and I see the homicide report. And I see the name of the person killed, Hassan Washington. Something broke in me that moment, and it's never healed. God had put him right in front of me. He was my dad. And when my dad was like him, the whole community came in. When his grandmama couldn't take care of him, a family took him in their own home and raised him like their own children. When my father no college in my family history, but it was the community that said, you're going to college, teachers that spent extra time with him. And when he couldn't afford to go to college, the community swept around him and gave him enough money to enroll. I am here because of that kind of love, of people who didn't just walk past. And I had my moment. God put him in front of me. I saw the risks. I saw the concerns. I made the promises. I will never forget his funeral. It was at Perry's funeral home, and it was the one room that's in the basement, and I hated going down there because it was this thin staircase, and you feel like you're descending into the bowel of a ship, and there we were, all of us, hundreds of people crowding into this room, chained together in grief, moaning and groaning and swaying for what is an American daily happening, another boy in a box, in communities that when we die, they don't even write about it in the news anymore. And I was the mayor, I was the father of the city, and I felt such shame and such hurt, and I couldn't stay. I'm embarrassed to tell you, I left. I didn't even stay for the services. I ran out of that room. I went to the mayor's office, I slammed the door, and for the first time as mayor of the city of Newark, I sat in my office and I wept. And all I could think about was, we were all there, crowded in that room for his death. Where were we for his life? You want to know why I started my talk about the need for a more courageous empathy, for a revival of civic grace, that it's about us and not him? It's because that's what I believe. The mistakes I've made in my life, like this one, they haunt me. I'm running for president of the United States now, but I've got lots of mentees in Newark, incredibly beautiful young kids, and I may be busy as hell, but I'm checking in with them all the time. One of my mentees just got into college. He's a freshman like you this year. The most powerful thing you can do in any day, John, listen to me, I promise you, this is proved true from my life, the biggest thing you can do in any day will always be a small act of kindness, decency, and love. Is being there for people next to you, no matter what the big mission, the big speech, the big election, those will come and go, but your life is the totality of the acts of kindness and decency and love piled up one to another that they overwhelm the world. And like that white guy on a couch in 1965, when you stand up for another American, it ripples out into history in ways like it did for my father, like it did for me, like it's done for you. That's one of the hardest lessons I've had to learn, all right?
Hi. Hello, Senator.
Hi.
So my name's Peyton Corbett, and
Is it Peyton?
Peyton, P-A-Y-T-O-N, like Walter.
No. No, there's a better quarterback named Peyton, right? Okay.
So I flew here today all the way from Boston, Massachusetts, to talk to you about retirement and pension security.
So can we clear the air?
Or insecurity.
So can we just clear the air now? New York, Boston, we have a bit of a rivalry here. Let's lead with love and leave that aside.
Okay.
And go right into retirement, please, because this is, I want everybody to hear this.
So
the Teamsters have been phenomenal in this issue, and I want everybody to hear it because it is outrageous what's going on, but go ahead.
So now I'm not a retiree yet, but I would like to be one day. I have a lot of gray hair for my age, but I promise you I've still got a long way to go.
Do like I do, shave it off, nobody will know.
Now, millions of hardworking Americans, including almost 500,000 Teamsters in the Central States Pension Fund, myself included, are in danger of our pensions going bankrupt. And all the hard work we put towards that retirement going out the door. So I want to ask you, what kind of solutions do you have to address this pension and retirement crisis?
Thank you very much. So everybody understand this. Imagine working your entire career with the promise of a pension, doing everything right, and then finding out that that pension is insecure and that that pension may not be there for your retirement. And remember, because I've been counseled by my friends not to use the word bailout, but I will use the word bailout when we bailed out the auto industries, when we bailed out the Wall Street funds. And so what these men and women are saying is like, we need help to stabilize our pension funds. And so I want you to know that I'm already on the record on this. I support the legislation that's going through the Senate right now to stabilize those funds. This is why we talked about this backstage, that this is not an individual election. Democracy is not an individual sport, it's a team sport. This is why I'm going to work so hard, especially if I'm your nominee, in campaigning, not just for myself in the White House, but I'm going to be campaigning in lots of states, including this one, to get rid of Mitch McConnell as the majority leader. And so if I am your president, you have my commitment, this is being recorded, that I am going to drive this legislation across the finish line to make sure that we stabilize your pensions and the pensions, as you said, of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Americans that are living in utter insecurity right now. Every American should retire with security, so I'm not going to stop with you. There are millions of American seniors right now who are living in that insecurity for a number of reasons. One is our Social Security system does not provide like it should. And the Social Security checks, which have not kept up with the cost of living, are too meager, so millions of seniors are effectively below the poverty line. I'm going to fix that by the common sense thing to do. Social Security taxes are regressive, because if you're somebody making $100,000 a year or less, you're paying more in Social Security tax percentage of your income than someone making $500,000 or $1 million. We need to make this tax fair by raising the cap, and so that we can increase benefits for our senior citizens. Number two, I just want to stay with this because they say it's the last question, and I really want, I know there's a lot of young folks in here, and I want you to think about this as you look at some of the people that are a little less young than you, that are like me. There's no old people in here. There's just young people with bodies that are, mature. Seasoned seniors, yes. We have a twisted nation that says to our seniors, you've saved your whole life. You've accrued a little bit of savings. And now for you to qualify for health care, we're going to make you bleed through all of your savings into poverty. I'm not exaggerating, just to qualify for Medicaid. That is absurd. That now you've saved your whole life. You want to have a little bit to leave to your family. So I've already dealt with that by telling people that I'm going to raise the caps on what you can have to qualify for Medicaid. So you can have a lot more in income or in savings to make this a fair system. Let's continue now. There are a lot of seniors that are faced with difficult decisions. Again, this is about respect and dignity in your elder years. This is something I don't understand. It gets back to what I call about the moral economy. When we don't do the right things economically, that are also not the right things morally. So here's another thing we do wrong. And I saw this with my mom. My father had Parkinson's disease. He died 6 days before I was elected to the United States Senate. And look, I think death can end a life, but it can't end a love. And I know my dad is watching me right now. He thinks my jokes need some work, but he's watching me right now. My mom took care of my dad. And anybody in this room who knows somebody that's taking care of someone with special needs, whether it's Alzheimer's, my father had dementia, whether it's a child with special needs, knows that that is hard work. But we are a society that doesn't honor that work. And I've seen what my mom did. It affected her physical health, trying to lift my father. Thank God my family had the resources, but she bled through a lot of her savings. And families that don't have the resources, they tumble into poverty. They often lose their homes because they can't work and take care of their family member with special needs. And so I'm like, enough of that. We're going to honor that for what it is. It's work. And under my plan, they're going to qualify for the earned income tax credit. And if you aren't working, but you're doing that work, if you're not working outside the home, but you're doing that work, you're going to qualify for up to $4,000 to help you as well in my RISE credit that we have. This is us. These aren't partisan issues. This is about what kind of society will we be? For the addicted, for the people who might have mental health challenges, for the people that are vulnerable, for the people that have special needs, for the people that are retiring. We are a nation that has to decide what is our defining characteristic. And I know why I'm here. Because people who didn't look like me, didn't pray like me, saw the dignity of my family and were willing to put their necks out for me. We all have that same story. Whatever you think, we are here because of love. And are you telling me that other countries love their children more than we do because they have paid family leave? I have a friend of mine named Natasha Laurel, works at an IHOP. Son had asthma, crossed the street in the hospital emergency room, and she had to make a decision that millions of women often have to face, which is, do I stay here and get the paycheck that I need to keep my car note, or do I go across the street, lose my car, or can't pay the rent? This is absurd to be the only developed nation that doesn't have paid family leave. Afghanistan and the Congo have paid family leave. I cannot tell you how upset I often get when we vilify each other. I literally am one of these people that I'll fight you on policy, and you saw I fought against Betsy DeVos's nomination, Jeff Sessions' nomination at the Kavanaugh hearings. You want to know what kind of fighter I am? There's an Oscar-nominated movie called Street Fight about how I beat a machine in Newark. And I want to tell you, it's very hard for me to admit this, but that movie lost in the Oscars to a movie called March of the Penguins, for crying out loud. I mean, really? I know they're cuter than me, but come on. But I also believe that you can't lead the people if you don't love the people. I also believe that just because somebody might have different views on the subject matter, you don't rip them down. We are where we are now in this curious position where, God, we don't like things like Obamacare. Americans, you poll Obamacare, Republicans are just against it, but you take away the label, and you poll the constituent parts, and people love it. Hey, yeah, but call it Obamacare. Oh, no. Come on. We've got to begin to get back to this sense of common purpose, because we've got common pain, and we have big fights ahead, not with each other, with challenges like climate change. And to mobilize this nation to deal with that, it's going to take the same kind of mobilization it took to beat the Nazis. Everybody's going to have to pull their weight, get involved. And so I want to leave you all with a metaphor that I saw where Martin Luther King was killed. It was this powerful reminder of who we are. If you go with me now to the Lorraine Motel, where Martin Luther King was shot. And there's a museum built there, but the balcony is still there. And right there where he was killed, if you look down, they wrote something on a block of stone. And what it says there is words from Scripture. Now, my faith is what guides me, but I'm one of these people that says, before you tell me about your religion, show it to me in how you treat other people, for crying out loud. You know, and I'm a guy that would rather hang out with a nice atheist than a mean Christian any day of the week. I mean, but this scripture right there, it has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with our civic gospel. Right there, it's words from Scripture that are the words of Joseph's brothers, who uttered these words before they grabbed Joseph with his coat of many colors and threw him into a pit to die. But for those of you that know this story from the Torah, from the Bible, from the Quran, you know that he didn't die in that pit. He rose on up and led an entire nation through crisis, Egypt. And so why, curiously, why would they put these words where Martin Luther King was killed? Well, when I say them to you, I hope they have the same effect on you as they had to me. They gave me chills because I knew they wrote them there not to honor King, but to challenge us. So that anybody who came to this site where one of our great leaders was slain would understand what our obligation is. Written right there where King was slain, the words of Joseph's brothers, uttered before they went to kill Joseph. It says this, "Behold, here cometh the dreamer. Let us slay him and see what becomes of the dream." What will become of our dream? The dream of our foremothers and forefathers. What will become of the dream of America on our watch? It's in a pit right now. It's in a pit where we say we're the home of the brave, and yet our bravest, our veterans, are disproportionately homeless. It's in a pit right now because the nation that says liberty and justice for all has a criminal justice system, as my friend says, that treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. We're in a pit right now that the nation that says we believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness has people putting aside their life-saving drugs because they can't afford them. What will become of the dream on our watch? Well, I'll tell you, it is time for a new generation of dreamers to stand up and say, I will dream this nation anew. The dream will not die on my watch because I will dream defiant dreams, courageous dreams, bold dreams, and I'll back those dreams up with sacrifice and service. I will back those dreams up with love. And if we do that, our dream will not perish in the pit. Together, America, we will rise. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.